The following is a presentation on the UFSN network. Welcome to the UFAFL Nation.
Yes, greetings and salutations. Welcome to episode 4 of the UFAFL Nation. I'm your host, Michael Skrzyniak. You can follow me on Twitter at MichaelSKRZ. Now, in this episode, we're going to go through week 1 of the NFL. Yes, football is back, and there's lots of storylines to talk about. We're going to get into UFAFL, see what happened, who scored the most points this week, big trade that happened last week before the Thursday Nighter. We'll get into stock up, stock down. Buffalo Bills fans, you're going to want to tune into that. And then we're going to get into the UFAFL Spotlight with the Heat Wave, who definitely had a busy week so far in the UFAFL. But before we get into that, this is where you guys can find us all. My Twitter handle, I'm MichaelSKRZ. You can follow the UFAFL as well in the scouting department, hosted by Jamie Thomas, who does a great job over there. You got to ask us any questions. By all means, you can email us there as well. And check out our website and see what we're doing at the UFAFL. There's always stuff going on. I can't keep up with all these chat groups as well. It's just this league literally never stops. So let's get into week 1. Plenty of things that happened right off the bat. How about that Monday Nighter? Week 1, Raiders and the Ravens. The Raiders pull off the shocking upset, 33-27 in overtime. Derek Carr lit up a Ravens defense that I thought was actually going to do way better week 1. You had an experienced D-line going against a team that totally reshuffled their offensive line. They shipped out an all-pro center. They reached for an Alabama guard in the first round, but they held their own. Like, Derek Carr needed to throw 56 times, but he got the job done. The Ravens defense really looked like they're missing Marcus Peters. He was one of the players that tore his Achilles last week along with Gus Edwards. The Ravens are definitely banged up. Even other star corner Marlon Humphrey got hurt during the game, and they were trying to put him on a couple different of the Raiders wide receivers, trying to find that matchup because the Raiders were just passing all over these guys. Darren Waller, absolute stud at tight end, saw 19 targets as a tight end. Like, guys like Randy Moss would rarely see 19 targets in a game, and you're getting a tight end to see that many targets. Like, that's incredible. So if you have him, you're obviously happy. Lamar Jackson, quarterback of the Ravens, still has some throwing issues. He made some decent throws down the field, but then he was missing some short check down passes to his running backs and his tight ends. So I'm really it's hard to see what the Ravens offense is going to look like going forward. However, the rushing game still looks pretty strong. Lamar had the most carries, but if you had Tyson Williams, the undrafted running back, who everyone seemed to pick up after all the injuries, you're pretty happy. He had a 35-yard TD on a 4th-and-1 play in the first half. Even Latavius Murray scored. He looks like a player that you might be able to maybe flex later on in the year. But a great win for the Raiders in a division that actually won all of their games this weekend. That AFC West looks really strong. But yes, big win for the Raiders in front of their home fans. Another big surprise that we saw Sunday, the New Orleans Saints crushing the Green Bay Packers. Jameis Winston, a very efficient 5 touchdowns. He didn't even hit 150 passing yards. And it's funny that Jameis Winston versus Aaron Rodgers matchup actually came to fruition in the UFAFL. Devon Claybrooks and his Crypto Warriors behind Jameis Winston were able to get the victory. They beat the Red Zone Dragons because Aaron Rodgers was only able to put up 5.65 points compared to Jameis Winston, who put up 44.8. That wasn't the only thing that tipped the scales, but it was funny to watch that matchup play in during the game. Another big shocker from the weekend, the Arizona Cardinals crushing the Tennessee Titans behind Kyler Murray, who had 5 total touchdowns, 309 total yards. Another division, the NFC West, also won all their games this weekend. Probably the hardest division in sports after the AL East in Major League Baseball with the Blue Jays, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Rays. Speaking of the NFC West, how about the Rams with Matthew Stafford? Boy, did they look good. Matthew Stafford, his first game in his new uniform, second pass of the game goes to Van Jefferson for a huge touchdown. The Rams can kill you in many ways. Not only do they have one of the best defenses with Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, but now with Matthew Stafford and a really efficient-looking passing attack, they can also kill you on the ground. Like I was watching Darrell Henderson just chew up the clock in the second half. So the Rams are going to be a really tough out. They're probably the favorite in the NFC going forward. They made the Bears defense, which has usually been pretty stingy, just look really, really average. Sean McVay, a couple years ago, we all deemed him like the best offensive genius in the NFL, but then we kind of forgot about him because Jared Goff wasn't looking very good. Todd Gurley got hurt. They really didn't they looked good last year in the playoffs, that one win, but then the Packers blew them out, and everyone kind of just forgot about Sean McVay. But now maybe with this trade with Matthew Stafford being his quarterback, they might be able to unleash that offense a little bit more. And people are probably going to think about Sean McVay again as this offensive guru and probably the best play caller in the league. Let's move on to the UFAFL recap. Before the games even started on Thursday night, there was a massive deal between the Heat Wave and the Turf Monsters. There were 13 players involved in the deal. The Heat Wave even sent a first round and a second round pick next year, plus 2,000 SCO. And the biggest name that they acquired, Odell Beckham Jr. from the Browns, who actually didn't even play in week 1 because of an injury. Kind of a late scratch. We were all kind of confused because I saw he was drafted relatively high, like a 5th, 6th round pick in your home leagues. There wasn't a whole lot of news about him not being available for week 1, but he didn't play. So the Heat Wave also get Marquez Callaway from the Saints, who looks like he's going to be the number 1 receiver for the Saints until Michael Thomas gets back from injury. And then they got Tyrell Williams from the Lions as well. Going back to the Turf Monsters, Christian Darrisaw, who was the 23rd overall pick from the Minnesota Vikings, offensive tackle. Any offensive lineman that's going to be blocking for Dalvin Cook, yeah, it's probably good, especially in the UFAFL where you consider offensive lineman points. That's probably a really good deal. He's going to be on his rookie contract for 4 or 5 years. So I definitely see the play for the Turf Monsters going forward. They also grabbed Brian Edwards, receiver from the Raiders, who actually made a couple really nice plays in the fourth quarter and in overtime yesterday for the Raiders. So the Heat Wave, that's a big move for them. We're going to talk about them with AFL Spotlight because, yeah, they had a pretty exciting week. Continuing on, to no one's surprise, Circus Sports Trout had the high score after Sunday night's games. They were one of only 2 teams to put up 300-plus points this week. Now, we put them in the UFAFL Spotlight a couple weeks ago because when you look at their offense, like you have Justin Herbert, Antonio Gibson, Antonio Brown, Devontae Smith, Damian Harris. The team just looked absolutely stacked on paper. And then they even got contributions this week from Quinton Cephas, who scored a touchdown for them as a receiver for the Rams. They were the only team to put up 300 points before Sunday. And then they even got contributions from Atlanta's punter, Cameron Nazalek. I've never even heard of the guy, and he put up 16 points because Matt Ryan and that offense just looked terrible. So that's the thing about the UFAFL. You just have to be deep in all your positions because you can get punters that are going to give you close to 20 points. So let's move over to stock up and stock down. Now, after week 1, it's pretty easy to overreact. My stock up this week, the Los Angeles Chargers offense. Watching this game, I was very curious to see what would happen because Austin Eckler, the running back, was questionable with his hamstring injury. And then you're just thinking, Washington's going to have a top 5 defense. How will Justin Herbert look, especially if Austin Eckler is limited? Well, Justin Herbert looked outstanding. On third downs alone, he went 13 of 16, piling up a total of 337 pass yards. Yeah, there were a couple mistakes that prevented him having a massive day. There was a fumble near the goal line. Even Mike Williams, he had a pass going to him. It got picked off. But with the Cowboys coming up in week 2, and then the Raiders in week 4, you got a matchup in KC in there as well. Baker Mayfield didn't look that bad against KC. So I can just see how, especially with a healthy Austin Eckler, I would just, if you have any Chargers, you're playing them for the next couple weeks because even against a stout defense like Washington, Justin Herbert looks like the real deal. Rashawn Slater, their left tackle that they drafted this year, looked like an absolute stud. I saw him go one-on-one with Chase Young a couple of times. Chase Young was the first defensive player, if you remember, taken in the UFAFL draft. And Slater was able to hold him up, and they were able to get some nice running game against them. So I really like what the Chargers are doing, and I like them going forward. Now, unfortunately for my stock down, the Buffalo Bills running backs. Now, it's not so much of the offense. It just feels like the number one running back on the Bills seems to be Josh Allen. Now, because I wasn't huge with the Bills running backs coming into the season, and then watching Sunday, like it further cemented my take. Before the game, Zach Moss was a healthy scratch. He was their second round pick last year. And like, how are you going to get scratched before the game when you know you're going to need to run the ball against a stout Pittsburgh defense? Matt Breida got barely any run except for that awful fourth down play that really turned the tide in that game. Even though Devin Singletary had a good game on paper, he fumbled twice. When they were close to the red zone, like he really couldn't get anything going because I don't think the Buffalo Bills offensive line, they're not the best run blocking unit. They're more of a pass blocking unit, which you really need when you have Josh Allen throwing 50 times back there. And then you have tough matchups going forward. Like you got the Miami Dolphins and then Washington coming up. So I would just say if you have any Buffalo Bills running backs, you probably, like, unless you're desperate, maybe play Devin Singletary in a flex. But it just doesn't really look good for them going forward. Now let's go with the UFAFL spotlight. So we talked about the Heatwave earlier with that big trade, but they put up the high score this week. 356 total points, highest in UFAFL. And the funny thing is they didn't get anything from Davante Adams, but they were carried by Christian McCaffrey, who, like shockingly, didn't score a touchdown, but was still the number one running back in half PPR and full PPR leagues. The guy had 9 catches for almost 100 yards, on top of almost having 100 yards rushing. The guy's an absolute stud. But what really helped the Heatwave this week was their defense. Defensive tackle Javon Hargrave had 2 sacks. And then last night, Raiders defensive end Max Crosby also had 2 sacks. San Francisco linebacker Dre Greenlaw had a pick 6 against the Lions. That just shows you about this league. Like, you have to have depth. We talked about this before, in every position, because you never know who can get you a touchdown. Like the fact that Davante Adams didn't have a great game and this guy still had the number one points this week. Like that's unbelievable. That's the great thing about the UFAFL. Defense matters in this league and punting matters. So unbelievable job. What a fun week this was. Week 2 looks pretty fun as well. Yeah, guys, going to be some good matchups. We got the Giants and Washington coming up this week. If you have any Washington players, you want to start them because the Giants, I watched them against Denver. Offense looks bad. Saquon Barkley, they're still working him back. Defense looks kind of average. Teddy Bridgewater looked really good against what I thought was going to be a more stout Giants D-line, but should be an exciting one Thursday. The Monday Nighter next week doesn't really look that fun. I bet the Packers are really looking forward to facing the Detroit Lions. Should help get Rodgers, Davante Adams, Aaron Jones, get all those guys back on track. Yeah, so thank you guys. If you want to reach out again for us, we have it up here, the graphic. Thank you to Dean Millard over in production getting this built. If you have any questions, guys, info@ufssports.com. And yeah, thank you for tuning in. Enjoy week 2 coming up. I expect way more fireworks. It's been a fun start to the year, and we'll chat with you guys next week.